Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpatching a legendary, decade-long military campaign. We're going to look at exactly how Alexander the Great systematically dismantled the massive Persian Empire and managed to establish one of the absolute largest territories in human history. 32? I mean, think about that for a second. At an age when most of us are honestly just figuring out our careers and life paths, this one man had already dismantled the Persian Empire, established one of history's largest connected territories, and then mysteriously died. It's just a stunning timeline, right? So how exactly does someone accomplish all of that, moving across the known world in just a few short years? Section 1. Inheriting the Macedonian army. Well, to really understand the sheer scale of this conquest, we've got to look at the highly advanced machine he inherited from his dad, Philip II. Alexander didn't just wake up one day and build a world-conquering force from scratch. No way. He was handed this incredibly finely tuned military apparatus built on some seriously brilliant tactical innovations. Philip developed the Macedonian phalanx. Picture this, a tightly packed formation of professional soldiers wielding something called a sarissa. It's this devastating 18-foot pike, basically giving them massive reach over any enemy. And it's this exact catalyst, the specific tactical edge, that provided the groundwork required for Alexander's unprecedented military expansion. Section 2. A decade of conquest. So, beginning in 334 BC, Alexander basically unleashes this inherited war machine on the ancient world, sparking a relentless 10-year military blitzkrieg against the Persian Empire. And combined with his own tactical genius, this resulted in some massive, truly iconic victories against vastly superior numbers. We're talking first at the Granicus, then Issus, and finally delivering the absolute crushing blow at Gaugamela. He didn't just overpower the enemy, he entirely outmaneuvered them. Often he was out there personally leading these devastating cavalry charges straight at the enemy leadership. These were absolutely the defining clashes that systematically dismantled the greatest superpower of the day, piece by piece. Now, the staggering geographic sweep of this journey is genuinely hard to comprehend, especially when you remember this was all done on foot and horseback, right? Starting at the Hellespont in 334 BC, they marched all the way down into Egypt over the following years, pushed deep into the rugged heart of Asia during the mid-campaign, and finally, a full 10 years later, reached the Indus River. We are talking about tens of thousands of miles traversed by soldiers just marching across deserts, mountains, and rivers in this relentless, exhausting push outward. Section 3. Reaching the Indus River. But as you might guess, even a legendary campaign eventually hits a wall. After an entire decade of non-stop warfare and endless marching, the physical limit of this explosive conquest actually wasn't dictated by some conquering enemy. It was ultimately dictated by his own soldiers. Hitting a breaking point at the Indus River, his utterly exhausted troops simply refused to go any further, and they forced a return. They had literally defeated every single army in their path, but their ultimate defeat came from the absolute limit of human endurance. And just like that, the physical expansion abruptly halted. Section 4. Autocracy and Persian Customs. This pause in momentum is just fascinating to me. Because, when you stop conquering the world outside, you're forced to look inside. And this is exactly where we start seeing the emergence of his increasingly complex personality, along with this serious internal fracture in leadership. There's this striking duality between his outward brilliance as a tactical military genius and the internal friction caused by his really rapid shift toward autocratic rule. The same man who is a brilliant commander on the battlefield was suddenly starting to demand he be treated as a living god. He was even executing dissenting generals who dared to question his changing authority. And this friction? Well, it was only amplified by a deepening cultural clash right inside his own camp. As Alexander began adopting Persian customs, wearing Persian royal dress, and even incorporating defeated enemies into his ranks, it deeply alienated his veteran Macedonian soldiers. Think about the stark contrast here for a second. These were the very soldiers who had marched with him for 10 years, the guys who had bled for him to build this huge empire, and now they were feeling entirely disconnected from a leader who was starting to look and act exactly like the kings they had set out to destroy. Section 5. The Hellenistic Age begins. So following his mysterious death at the incredibly young age of 32, we have to look at the enduring echo of this chaotic 10-year reign. What happens when the singular architect of a massive, sprawling territory just suddenly vanishes? Well, the immediate result was an incredibly unstable, fractured empire. Without him there to hold the whole shebang together, his generals almost immediately turned on each other. They started fighting over the puzzle pieces of his conquered lands, basically carving it up into separate, warring kingdoms. But here's where it gets really interesting. While his physical borders collapsed, almost instantly, his campaign achieved a far more lasting cultural victory, one that completely transcended politics. His conquests successfully inaugurated what's known as the Hellenistic Age. This was an era characterized by the massive spread of Greek culture all across the ancient world. Basically, by moving his army across the map, he spread Greek ideas, language, art, and philosophy far beyond the Mediterranean. And the reason this matters so deeply for us today is because that massive cultural fusion laid the direct foundation for modern Western civilization. We literally still see its impact right now. And the architecture of our cities, the structure of our democratic ideals, and even the very roots of the language we speak. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this provocative thought. His empire fractured almost immediately, sure, but Greek culture essentially conquered the ancient world. It kind of forces us to entirely rethink what a lasting victory actually is, doesn't it? Considering how completely his culture endured and shaped the very world we live in today, did Alexander actually win after he died?